Please, don't throw it away.
It still smells like my daddy. The words came out so small, so certain, so completely without performance, that everyone in the room went still. The little girl was sitting on the floor of the hotel suite's living area, holding a dress against her chest with both arms wrapped around it, the way you hold something you are terrified of losing. The fabric was torn, badly, along the side seam and across the hem, pale yellow cotton with tiny white dots, the kind of dress that cost nothing and meant everything. Her face was wet. Her eyes were fixed on her mother with an expression that wasn't a demand and wasn't a plea. It was simply the truth of a 4-year-old who understood in her bones that some things cannot be replaced. Remy Calloway. Fitch stood 3 feet away and felt the particular helplessness of a woman who could solve almost anything and could not solve this. She was 30 years old. She was the founder and CEO of Calloway Stitch, one of the fastest-growing fashion labels in the country. A company she had built from a single collection into a brand with distribution in 14 markets. She had been on 3 magazine covers in the past 2 years. She had a team of 47 people and a design studio in Lower Manhattan with a view that made visitors stop talking mid-sentence. She wore clothes that other people only saw in photographs. And she was standing in a hotel suite in a city she barely knew, looking at her daughter sitting on the floor, holding a ruined dress that a man named Patrick had bought for $11 at a farmer's market 2 summers ago, and she had absolutely no idea what to do. Patrick had been gone for 14 months. A cardiac event, sudden and unjust at 31 years old. He had been the kind of person who bought $11 dresses at farmers' markets because he saw the yellow and thought of Wren immediately. Their daughter's name. Wren because she was small and quick and made the most beautiful sounds. He had bought it, brought it home, put it on her right there in the kitchen, and danced with her on the tile floor while Remy leaned in the doorway and felt, for one of the last times without knowing it, completely and entirely fine. Wren had worn that dress 17 times since his funeral. Remy had counted. "Baby," Remy said carefully, "the dress is really torn. The side is... It's a lot, sweetheart." "I don't care," Wren said, not defiant. "Just clear. We can find another one just like it. It won't smell like him." Wren's arms tightened around the fabric. "This one does." Remy pressed her hand to her mouth for a moment. Then she crouched down on the floor. "Okay," she said. "We're going to fix it. I promise. We're going to find someone who can fix it." Her assistant, a 26-year-old named Darby who was extremely competent and currently wide-eyed, had found 3 options within 20 minutes on her phone. 2 were dry cleaners with minor alteration services. The third was a small tailoring shop on Fenwick Street, 4 blocks from the hotel, with a handwritten sign in the window and a 5-star rating made up of 11 reviews, most of which said variations of the same thing. He takes care of it like it's his own. They walked. Remy carried Wren on her hip with the dress folded over her arm, and Darby walked slightly behind them in the way good assistants walk, present but not intruding. The October morning was cool and specific, the kind that smells like turning leaves and distant coffee, and the particular clarity that comes before the city fully wakes. Fenwick Street was narrow and unhurried. The tailoring shop sat between a bookstore and a hardware supplier, its window displaying 3 pressed garments on slim wooden hangers and a handwritten card that read, in careful block letters, "All work done with care. No job too small." The bell above the door made a sound like a small, clear note. The man behind the counter looked up from a piece of fabric he was pinning. He was 33 years old, with the kind of face that takes in information quietly before responding. Dark eyes, steady hands, a measuring tape around his neck the way other people wear keys. He was wearing a plain gray Henley with a small ink stain near the cuff that he had clearly noticed and chosen to ignore, because he was in the middle of something. His name was Callum Rest. He had run this shop for 6 years, since the age of 27, taking it over from an older tailor named Mr. Fenwick, no relation to the street. Just a coincidence that had always pleased him, who had taught him everything worth knowing and then retired to his sister's house in Vermont. Callum had grown up 3 neighborhoods away, the son of a woman named Dorothea, who did home alterations and had taught him his first stitches on a borrowed machine when he was 9 years old. He had wanted to study fashion design, had actually been accepted once, to a program he still thought about sometimes on quiet mornings. But the money hadn't come together, and life had moved forward without that particular door, and he had made his peace with it the way you make peace with things you can't change, by pouring what you would have done there into what you actually do here. He treated every piece of clothing that came through his door as though someone had trusted him with something real, because they had. "Good morning," he said. Remy set Ren down and held out the dress. The seam tore and the hem came apart. I know it's just cotton, but it matters a lot." Callum took the dress with both hands. He looked at it with the same attention he gave everything. Not fast, not performative, just genuine. He turned it over, examined the tear along the side seam, which had gone about 4 inches and frayed at the edge, looked at the hem, which had separated from the body of the dress for nearly the entire back length. Then he looked at the little girl. Ren was watching him with the focused, unblinking attention of a child deciding whether an adult was trustworthy. She was holding her own hands in front of her, fingers laced, which Remy recognized as the thing she did when she was trying very hard to be patient. "Is this yours?" Callum asked her. Ren nodded. "My daddy gave it to me." A pause. "Very small. The kind that means something registered. Then we'll be very careful with it," he said. He said it simply, without weight. The way you say something true when you don't need to make a production of it. Ren exhaled, her fingers unlaced. Remy watched this and felt something move through her chest that she didn't have a name for immediately. Callum carried the dress to his workstation at the back of the shop, a long wooden table under good light. The surface worn smooth by years of use and covered now with the quiet tools of his work. Thread in 40 colors sorted by value. Needles in 3 sizes on a magnetic strip, a seam ripper with a worn handle. Scissors that had been sharpened so many times the blades had developed a personality. His machine sat to the left, a mid-range domestic model he had modified twice for precision. He laid the dress flat, studied the seam. The original construction was simple. A child's dress, home production quality with a surged edge that had finally given out under repeated wear. The hem was hand-stitched originally, he could see that, small, irregular stitches that had been done by someone who was being careful but wasn't a professional. He thought about that for a moment. Someone had hemmed this dress by hand. Someone had sat down and done it slowly, stitch by stitch. He threaded his needle with a yellow cotton that matched within 1 shade. He pressed the seam allowance flat with his thumb before pinning it, feeling the fabric's weight and weave. Good cotton, worn soft, the kind that gets better with washing. He worked quietly. Remy sat in one of the 2 chairs near the window, Ren on her lap, and they watched. The shop was still except for the small sounds of his work. The pull of thread, the soft snap of scissors trimming, the particular silence of concentration. After 20 minutes, Ren climbed down from her mother's lap and walked to the edge of the workstation. She stood there, watching his hands, for a long time. "Are you fixing the part my daddy sewed?" she asked. Callum looked up, then looked at the hem stitching he'd examined earlier. He understood now. "He hemmed this himself?" "Mama said it was too long, so he fixed it," Ren said. "He did it on the couch. He used a green thread because that was the only color we had." Callum looked at the hem again. The green thread he saw now. He'd registered it as slightly off color without placing it. It was green. A brighter green than the yellow dress warranted, the choice of someone working with what was on hand and not minding. He set down his needle. He reached into his thread drawer and found the closest green he had. Not identical, but close, a yellow-green that sat near the original. He rethreaded. "I'm going to match it," he said to Ren. "The hem will stay the way he did it. I'll just reinforce it so it holds." Ren looked at him. "You're not going to change it?" "No," he said. "Why would I change something that was done with care?" The little girl was quiet for a moment. Then she turned and went back to her mother, climbed up, and put her head against Remy's shoulder. Remy's hand came up to rest on her daughter's back. She was looking at Callum. He went back to work. It took 40 minutes total. When he finished, he pressed the dress lightly with a cool iron, just enough to settle the seams, and hung it on a slim wooden hanger. He carried it to the front of the shop and held it out. The side seam was invisible. The hem lay perfectly flat. The original green stitching was intact, reinforced from beneath with the matching thread, the repair invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The dress looked whole, unhurried, cared for. Ren slid down from her mother's lap and took it. She held it up, turning it, looking at the hem. Then she brought it to her face and breathed in. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "It still smells like him." The shop held that quiet. Remy stood and reached for her wallet. "What do I owe you?" Callum shook his head. "Nothing." She looked at him. "That was an hour of your morning." "Some things don't have a number," he said. He said it gently, without drama, the way you say something you've actually thought about rather than something you're performing. She needed the dress to be whole again. That's what mattered. Remy stood very still. In her world, the world of fashion, of product and value and margin and positioning, she had never once heard anyone say those words. Not like that. Not meaning them completely. She had heard complimentary alterations as a client retention strategy. She had heard generosity deployed as branding. She had never heard a man with ink on his cuff and a shop the size of a living room simply say, "Some things don't have a number," and mean it down to the floor. She looked at the dress in her daughter's arms. She looked at his workstation, the neat thread, the careful tools, the dress form in the corner draped with someone else's partially finished garment. She looked at his hands, which were already moving back to the work he'd set aside when they walked in. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He looked up. "Did you study design?" A small pause. "I was accepted once. It didn't work out." "Where?" He named the program. It was one of the 3 best in the country. Remy had guest lectured there twice. She absorbed this without showing all of what she was thinking. "Do you do anything beyond alterations?" "Some construction. I make things occasionally when someone wants something original." He nodded toward a garment on the far rack, a woman's jacket in a deep teal, structured at the shoulder, with a detail at the lapel that Remy's eye went to immediately. She crossed to it before she'd decided to. She examined the lapel detail. It was a folded construction she had never seen executed quite that way. A subtle origami logic to it, functional and beautiful. The kind of thing that took spatial understanding and patience and something else that couldn't be taught. She turned back the lining with one careful finger. The interior seams were as clean as the exterior. "Cleaner." "You made this?" she said, for a woman down the street. She wanted something for her retirement dinner. Remy set it back on the rack. She was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone reorganizing something in their mind. Then she took a card from her wallet and held it out. He looked at it. Remy Calloway Fitch, founder and CEO, Calloway Stitch. He looked at her. "I'm not offering you anything right now," she said honestly. "I don't do that. But I'd like to come back and talk if you're open to it. About what you make. About what you might want to make." She paused. "No obligation. Just a conversation." He took the card, looked at it once more, set it on the counter beside his measuring tape. "Okay," he said. She came back 4 days later, without Darby, without an agenda prepared. She sat in one of the window chairs and they talked for 2 hours. She showed him work from her current collection on her phone. He showed her a sketchbook he kept under the counter, not for clients, just for himself, pages of garment ideas drawn in pencil with notes in the margins about construction and fabric behavior. She turned the pages slowly, saying nothing for a long time. The sketches were extraordinary. Not flashy, considered. Each one showed an understanding of how fabric moved on a body, how structure could serve emotion rather than override it. There was a coat in the middle of the book with a lining detail that made her stop breathing for a moment. She looked up. "This lining," she said. "I've never made it. I just had the idea." "I want to make it," she said. "I want to see what it does." He was quiet. "You'd need to trust me on the construction." "I already do," she said. She said it plainly without performance. The way you say something after 4 days of thinking about a man who reinforced a 4-year-old's hemstitching in green thread because he didn't want to change something done with care. He joined her company. 3 months later, not at the top, not instantly, not in a way that skipped the necessary steps. He came in as a senior construction consultant, working with the pattern team on technical execution. He was quiet in meetings and precise in the workroom, and the people who worked alongside him noticed within 2 weeks that he had a quality that was difficult to name. He treated every garment as though someone would love it. Not as a product, as a thing that would matter to a person. His mother, Dorothea, came to visit the studio in the 4th month. She walked through the workroom slowly, touching nothing, looking at everything. At the end, she found Callum at his station and put her hand on his arm. "This is what you always should have had," she said. He covered her hand with his. "I had what I needed to get here," he said. "I think that's how it works." She looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded, the way mothers nod when they are trying not to cry in a professional setting. Remy learned things from him that she hadn't known she needed to learn. Not about construction. She knew construction. About intention. About the difference between making something beautiful and making something that held something for the person wearing it. She had built a company on aesthetics and had somewhere along the way begun to lose the thread of the thing she had originally cared about, which was that clothes touched people. That what you put on your body in the morning was part of how you faced the day. That fabric had a relationship with emotion that no amount of marketing could manufacture. She began to come back to that. It showed in the next collection. The reviews noticed something different. A warmth in the work, and used words like intimate and considered, and one critic wrote that Callaway Stitch had found something that most fashion companies spent decades searching for and never located. She read that review on a Tuesday morning in the studio and sent it to Callum without comment. He replied 2 minutes later. The teal jacket woman called. She wore it to 3 more things. She laughed. The real kind, the one that arrived before she could shape it. Wren turned 5 in the spring. Her birthday party was small. A few children from her daycare, balloons in yellow and white, a cake that she had specified must have a bird on it. Remy had not planned to invite Callum. It felt like crossing a line she wasn't certain about. But Wren, who had a 4-year-old's, now 5-year-old's, complete disregard for the lines adults drew, had asked about him 3 times in the preceding month. "Is the careful man coming?" That was what she called him. The careful man. He came. He brought a gift that was wrapped in brown paper and tied with yellow thread. Inside was a small drawstring bag made of the same pale yellow cotton as the dress. Not a copy of the dress, not a replacement, just a companion piece, a place to keep things safe. On the inside of the bag, in careful green thread, he had embroidered a small bird. Wren held it for a long time without speaking. Then she looked at him with her father's eyes. Remy saw it in that moment, the particular directness that had been Patrick's, and said, "Did you make this for me?" "I did," he said. "Did you use green thread on purpose?" "Yes," he said. She nodded, satisfied in the complete way of someone who has received an answer that makes total sense. She put the bag carefully into her lap and went back to her cake. Remy looked across the room at Callum. He was watching Wren with the expression of someone who had done something small and right and needed no acknowledgement of it. She thought about a morning in October, a torn dress, a man who had said, "Why would I change something done with care?" She thought about Patrick hemming that dress on the couch with the only thread they had. She thought about how kindness moved through the world, not in straight lines but in stitches, one connecting to the next, each one small, the whole of it holding something together that would otherwise come apart. 2 years later, Callum's name appeared on the label of a Callaway Stitch collection for the first time, designed in collaboration with Callum Rest, and the collection was the most personal work the company had ever released. Every piece had something in it that was meant to be kept, a hidden pocket, an interior detail, something the wearer would find and feel seen by. He still had the shop on Fenwick Street. He went on Saturday mornings when the studio was closed. and did what he had always done. Small repairs, careful work. The occasional person who came in with something torn and valuable and needed someone who understood that some things were beyond price. He never charged for those. He never planned to. And in the window of the shop, alongside the 3 pressed garments on their wooden hangers, there was a new card. Handwritten in the same careful block letters as before, all work done with care. No job too small. Below it, added recently, in slightly smaller writing, especially the ones that matter most. The moral of this story lives in green thread on a yellow dress. It lives in a man who looked at a torn piece of cheap cotton and saw a child's grief and a father's love and chose to honor both. Kindness is not measured by the value of what it's given to. It is measured by the care with which it is given. Callum Rest fixed a dress worth $11 with the same precision and reverence he would have given the finest garment in the world, because to the person who needed it fixed, it was the finest garment in the world. That understanding, that simple, radical act of seeing what something truly is rather than what it costs, changed the course of his life. Not because kindness is a transaction, but because the world recognizes eventually a person who treats all things as though they matter. Because they do. All of them do. Give your best work to the things that matter to people. You will never regret the care. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.